At 2 in the morning, the Black Crown Casino Hotel was still breathing. The main floor never slept. Slot machines spun their colors into the dark, and the low, steady murmur of card tables carried through the corridors like something alive. Most of the hotel guests never came to the service hallways. Most people in the Black Crown never needed to. But Mira Collins had spent 3 years learning every service corridor, every emergency linen closet, every back exit between floors 2 and 12. She pushed the housekeeping cart down the hallway, with the particular efficiency of someone who has made peace with the fact that no one will thank her for it. Her eyes were red, not from crying, from a 14-hour shift after a 3-hour sleep. In the plastic chair tucked beside the service elevator, a small figure sat with his knees pulled up, a chewed pencil in his hand, drawing on the back of a hotel receipt. Evan was 6 years old. He had his mother's dark eyes and his own particular way of looking at the world. Not through it, the way most children did, but directly at the specific part of it he had decided was interesting. Tonight, as most nights when Mira brought him with her on the late shift, he was drawing a diagram. This one was a rectangle with numbers beside it and thin lines running between them. A cross-section of an elevator. To be precise, the service elevator on the east wing, the one that had been making a sound he didn't like for the past 3 weeks. If you had asked Evan to explain what he was drawing, he would have said he was trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. He had a gift for noticing sounds, not because he was unusual, because he was very quiet, and quiet children hear more than noisy ones. Mira had not been able to afford the after-school childcare program since the rate increase in February. The babysitter who lived in her building had been sick for 2 weeks. The night shift at the Black Crown started at 10 and ran until 4, and the choice between bringing Evan and paying for childcare she couldn't afford wasn't really a choice at all. So he came with her. He sat in his chair, he drew his diagrams, and he was careful not to touch anything except the worn handle of the stuffed rabbit he kept in his jacket pocket. He was careful about rules. He knew the ones that mattered, which was why the sound coming from the East Wing service elevator bothered him. It was not the right sound. He had memorized the right sound. The hum when the car engaged, the secondary tone when it leveled at a floor, the particular rhythm of the counterweight cable adjusting on the descent. This was not those sounds. This was something lower. Something that hummed where it should have been silent, and went silent where it should have hummed. He had told his mother. She had listened, the way she always listened. Seriously, without condescension, because she had learned early that Evan's observations were usually correct. She had also told him not to touch anything. She had told him not to go near the elevator panel. He had not gone near it. He had only drawn a diagram. That was apparently enough. At 2:15, the service elevator on the East Wing went out of service. It stopped between floors, refused all inputs, and required a maintenance call. Trent Lawson, the night manager of the Black Crown Hotel, arrived in the service corridor within 6 minutes. He was a tall man who wore his authority the way some people wear their best coat, visibly, and at every opportunity. He walked directly to Mira and looked at the chair where Evan was sitting. "Your son was near this elevator," Trent said. "He draws these things." He picked up one of Evan's diagrams from the floor. "He's been inside the maintenance panel area twice this week. He has not touched anything," Mira said. "He sits and he draws. That's what he does. Your kid is a walking liability, Mira." The words were not loud. They didn't need to be. 3 other housekeeping staff were in the hallway. 2 of them looked at Evan. 1 looked away. Trent raised his voice slightly, the way people do when they have decided to make something a performance. This is the 3rd incident this month involving areas where your child has been present. I cannot have an employee bringing an unsupervised child into the technical areas of this property. He was in the service hallway, Mira said. In a chair. He was not in a technical area. Trent looked at the diagram in his hand. He drew the inside of our elevator system. He draws things he notices. He's 6 years old. He's a strange little problem, Mira. And at this hour, in this building, I don't have the patience for strange little problems. Mira put herself between Trent and Evan, not aggressively, with the particular steadiness of a woman who had made this gesture 100 times in 100 different rooms. My son is not strange, she said. He notices what the rest of you are too busy to see. A small sound came from the far end of the corridor. Laughter. Not unkind exactly. The distant, reflexive kind that happens when a crowd decides something is absurd. 2 casino guests had wandered into the service hall looking for a bathroom. They had heard enough. One of them said something to the other. The other smiled. Evan was looking at the elevator, not at the people. At the elevator. Specifically, at the service elevator panel on the east wall, and then at the VIP elevator bank at the end of the main corridor, visible through the service door that had been propped open for the laundry cart. His expression was the expression he wore when something was not adding up. The elevator is lying, he said. Trent turned. I beg your pardon? Evan pointed at the VIP bank. That one. It says it's safe, but it isn't making the right sounds. At the end of the corridor, where the service hallway connected to the main lobby, a man had stopped walking. He was tall, wearing a dark suit that had not come from a hotel gift shop. He was accompanied by another man who stood slightly behind him in the particular posture of a person whose job is to watch for problems before they become visible. The first man was Roman Black. He was 38 years old. He owned the Black Crown Casino and Hotel in the way that people own things they have built from the ground up and watched become. Something that required managing rather than loving. He was in the building at 2 in the morning because he had a financial audit scheduled for 4 a.m. And there were documents that needed to be signed before that meeting began. He had come down to the service corridor because he had heard there was an elevator problem, and elevator problems in his building were things he liked to address personally. He had heard the last sentence clearly. He looked at the small figure standing beside the housekeeping cart. Why would an elevator lie? He said. The lobby went very quiet, not the service corridor. The lobby beyond it, where a handful of late-night guests and 2 security staff had turned to watch. Evan looked at Roman. His expression did not change. Because people can make machines say the wrong thing, he said. Roman walked toward them. Trent straightened his jacket. Silas Monroe, who had been standing at Roman's shoulder, said nothing. He was a compact man with close-cut gray at his temples, and the particular manner of someone who had spent decades making himself useful without making himself visible. He had been Roman's underboss for 11 years. He had, in year 3 of those 11 years, pulled Roman from a situation that would otherwise have ended very badly. Roman had not forgotten this. Roman found it very difficult to distrust Silas Monroe. He was working on it. From the far side of the service doorway, an older man in maintenance coveralls stepped forward. Felix Ortega was 62 years old, and had worked in the mechanical systems of the Black Crown since the building's original construction. He had been asked to step back from active maintenance duties 3 months ago. Silas had recommended it, citing modernization of the systems. Felix had accepted it, the way old men accept things. When they understand, there is no point in arguing. He had come tonight because a former colleague had called him about the East Wing issue. He looked at the diagram in Trent's hand. He took it without asking permission. He studied it. He said, "The kid got the counterweight ratio right. He's got the service shaft dimensions right. He's got the access panel location right." He looked at Evan. "How did you know where the access panel is?" Evan said, "You showed me last month, when you were testing the lower cable." Felix was quiet. Then he said, "I showed you the emergency recall button." "Behind the glass," Evan said. "You said it was the only button a kid should ever know." Felix looked at Roman. He said, "Old recall system. Pre-renovation. Still runs beneath the new interface on both the service shaft and the VIP bank. They share an underlying safety layer that was never disconnected." Roman looked at the VIP elevator bank. He looked at the display panel. Green across all indicators. All systems nominal. All clear. He said, "Take the VIP bank offline. Manual inspection. Tonight." Trent started to speak. Roman looked at him. Trent stopped. 40 minutes later, the inspection team reported back. No structural issue found. No mechanical fault detected. The system was reading green because the system was designed to read green. The displays were accurate. Roman read the report. He read it again, Silas said. "The boy heard background noise from the renovation work on 7. It carries through the ventilation sometimes. The system is clean, Roman. The VIP bank is clear." Roman said, "And the private executive lift?" Silas said, "Separate system, separate shaft. Been running on isolated protocols since we installed it 3 years ago." June confirmed green on that one herself. On the other side of the room, the control desk technician, a woman named June Park, was looking at her monitor. She was 26 years old. She had been in her current position for 18 months. She had excellent instincts and a deep fear of the consequences of acting on them. She had seen something on the executive lift monitor 40 minutes ago. A flicker, a signal that resolved itself immediately and left no logged trace. She had looked at Silas. Silas had looked back at her. She had turned back to her desk. She was still looking at the monitor. She had not said anything. She told herself this was because she might have been wrong. She told herself this for the next 20 minutes while she watched the executive lift display hold steady green. Silas found Roman in the documents room at 3:15. He said there were 3 signatures needed before the audit team arrived. He said the attorney had called from upstairs and needed the file confirmation in person. He said the executive lift was the fastest route to the 62nd floor where the attorney was waiting. He said all of this with the ease of a man who had spent 11 years making himself useful. Roman signed 2 of the 3 documents and walked toward the executive lift. His 2 security staff followed. The doors opened, polished interior. The quiet of a space that has been carefully maintained. Roman stepped inside. Evan heard the sound the moment the executive lift engaged. He was sitting in the service corridor with his rabbit and his pencil, waiting for his mother to finish the room, turned down on 12. The sound came through the wall, not through the ventilation, through the concrete itself. He had heard this sound before, in a different context, when a cable was under stress that it was not designed to absorb. He stood up. Mira came around the corner with the cart. Evan, sit down. Mom. He said it in the voice he used when he meant something. Not urgent, the way children perform urgency. Certain, the way he was certain about sounds. It's the same lie, he said. The executive lift. Mira looked at him. She had spent 6 years listening to her son. She had spent 6 years watching the world dismiss what he said. She had spent 6 years being correct about him and being wrong about trusting other people to see it. Where? She said. The control room, the old one. Felix showed me. Mira looked down the corridor. Trent was at the service desk 30 feet away. She made a decision. She looked at her cart. She pulled it sideways across the corridor, angling it precisely to block the path between the desk and the service doorway. Trent looked up. What are you? I'll be right back, Mira said. She took Evan's hand and they ran. The old control room was on the lower service level, 2 floors below the main floor. It had been used before the renovation to manage the original elevator systems. It still had power. It still had its original panel. Behind a panel of cracked safety glass was a row of override controls. Most of them were obsolete. One of them was not. The old emergency recall button. Yellow housing. Black print. Simple in the way that safety systems are simple when they are designed to be operated under pressure by someone who does not have time to think. Evan looked at it. He remembered Felix standing beside him in this room. He remembered the old man's voice. This is the only button a kid should ever know. If something is falling, this tells it to stop. He picked up the small fire extinguisher from the wall bracket beside the door. His hands were shaking. Not with fear, with the particular tremor that happens when a person understands the weight of what they are about to do. He hit the glass once. It cracked. Twice. It shattered. He pressed the button. On the 62nd floor, the executive lift doors had not yet opened. The car had moved 2 floors and then jolted. Not a free fall, a catch. The emergency recall engaged the old safety brake system, locking the car at the 45th floor, between panels, unmoving. Roman stumbled against the wall. One of his security staff grabbed the railing. The second hit the emergency phone. They were suspended. They were not moving. The car held. In the old control room, 2 floors. Below the casino floor, Mira put her arms around her son. She did not say anything. She just held him while he shook. They both heard the distant thud, and then the silence, and then the sound of footsteps. Not rescue teams. Too fast. Too purposeful. The door to the control room opened. Trent Lawson stood in the frame. Behind him were 2 men who did not work for the hotel. The boy needs to come with us, Trent said. For questioning. Mira stood up. She put herself between Evan and the door. He's not going anywhere with you. This is a safety incident investigation. Your son triggered a manual recall without authorization. My son just stopped an elevator that was going to kill someone, Mira said. Who? Said a voice from the corridor behind Trent. Trent moved aside. Silas Monroe stood in the hallway. He looked at Evan. He looked at the broken glass. He looked at Mira. Bring the boy, he said. Leave the mother. Mira said, touch my son, and every person in this building will know what's on the other side of that door. Silas looked at her. You're a housekeeper, Mira. Nobody is going to listen to a housekeeper at 3 in the morning. Then they'll listen to me. Roman Black was standing at the end of the corridor. He had come down from the 45th floor in the service stairwell. After the emergency team reached the car, he had 2 of his own security staff behind him. He looked at Silas. He looked at Trent. He looked at Evan. He said, "Silas, step back." The corridor was very still. Silas looked at Roman. 11 years was in that look. The debt was in that look. Roman looked back. He said, "Leave them alone." Silas stepped back. Roman walked to Mira. He stopped in front of her and looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at Evan. "The boy is right," he said. The elevator was lying. He took them upstairs. Not to the executive floor. To the residential level, the safe rooms, the ones that had a separate security system and access codes that Trent did not have. He gave them a room. He gave Mira a phone with a direct line to his operations team. He asked her, "What does Evan need right now?" She looked at him. She had expected a debrief. She had expected the interrogation dressed up as gratitude. "He needs to draw," she said, "and he needs to not be treated like a problem to solve." Roman said, "All right." He called for drawing materials. He sat across the room and watched Evan work. He said, "I want to understand what he noticed, not for investigation. Because I want to know how a 6-year-old heard something my entire technical team missed." Mira said, "My son is not your machine to open." She said it without raising her voice. Just clearly, he shuts down when people treat him like a case. If you want to know what he knows, you sit beside him and you wait. Roman said, "Then I won't ask." He pulled his chair to the table. He sat. He was quiet. Evan drew. After several minutes, Evan turned his drawing so Roman could see it. It showed the executive lift shaft. It showed a dashed line running from the primary control interface to a second layer below. It showed the old emergency system. It showed a connection point. And at the bottom of the drawing, it showed a room. Below the casino floor. Below the main service level. With a small arrow pointing down and to the left. Evan touched the arrow. "There's another room," he said. "Old, where the backup computers are." Roman looked at Felix, who had come in quietly 20 minutes earlier. Felix looked at the drawing. He said, "Service bunker. Built when the casino was constructed. Predates the current network by 15 years. The backup logs from the original systems still run on isolated hardware down there. Can't be accessed from the main server. Can't be modified from the control room." Roman looked at Mira. Mira said, "The service corridor to it. I've cleaned near that door. It's always locked. I thought it was decommissioned." Roman looked at Silas. Silas said nothing, but his hand, the one resting on the table, was very still. The kind of still that is not relaxed. Roman said, "I want to go down there." June Park appeared in the doorway. She had walked from the control desk to the residential level without being asked. She had not been sure she would come all this way. She had come because she had spent 3 hours watching a 6-year-old boy be called a problem for noticing the truth, and she had not been able to sit down for the last 20 minutes without her chest feeling wrong. She said, "The system didn't fail. Someone told it to pretend it was safe." She said it to Roman. She said it in the same quiet voice she used for everything. The green signal on the executive lift wasn't generated by the safety check. It was manually overridden at 10:47 tonight. I saw the signature flicker on my screen, and I looked at. She stopped. She looked at the table. She started again. I looked at someone in the room, and I decided I had probably made a mistake. I had not made a mistake. Roman said, "Whose override code?" June's said, "It will be in the backup logs." Roman looked at Silas. Silas said, "Roman, think about what you're doing. You're building a case out of a housekeeper, a scared technician, and a child who hears things in walls." Roman said, Get the boy away from the elevators. That's what you texted Trent tonight. Get the boy away before he hears too much. Silas was quiet. I have your message log, Roman said. I pulled it when you told me to use the executive lift instead of waiting for the VIP bank. I pulled it because you gave me a reason I didn't ask for, and I've known you long enough to know that you only do that when you're managing something. He stood up. We're going to the bunker. Roman sent 2 guards ahead first, then Felix, then June. Only when the corridor was clear did Mira let Evan take her hand. Stay beside me, she said. The whole time, he nodded. The service route to the old bunker ran beneath the casino floor, through a maintenance corridor that had not been used for its original purpose in 15 years. Mira walked beside Roman. Evan was behind her. He had insisted on coming. He knew where the terminal was. He had drawn it. She had almost said no. She had looked at her son's face. She had said, "Stay beside me," the whole time. He had nodded. He had taken her hand. They followed the corridor down 2 levels. The door at the end was old steel with a simple mechanical lock. Felix had the key. He had kept it for 15 years because he believed in keeping things. The bunker was cold and fluorescent and smelled of concrete that had not seen air movement in a long time. There were terminals along one wall, hardware from 15 years ago, running on isolated power, still active. Evan walked directly to the 3rd terminal from the left. He pointed. Roman's operations team pulled the data. The backup logs held everything the main system had been told to delete. The override command for the executive lift, the timestamp, the access credentials, the authorization level, Silas Monroe, underboss, Black Crown Casino, senior authorization. The logs also held 3 years of financial routing records that the main database had been told to discard, accounts that did not belong to casino operations. Transfer patterns that followed a logic the casino's auditors had been prepared to find in the morning. The financial audit that was scheduled for 4 a.m. had not been a secret. It had been announced 2 weeks ago. In the logs, 2 weeks ago was also when the first preparatory command for the executive lift override had been entered. Roman looked at the data. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The audit would have found all of this." He was not asking. Silas said, "You were going to tear down everything we built because you trusted a woman who cannot afford childcare and her son who hears things in walls." Roman said, "I trusted my own elevator system, which you modified to kill me," Silas said. "Empires don't belong to men who still stop for crying children." Roman looked at him. He said, "Then maybe empires like yours deserve to fall." He nodded to the 2 men beside him. They moved. Silas was brought out of the bunker quietly, without the drama he would have preferred, into the corridors where the backup logs were already uploading to 3 separate external drives, and June Park was writing her statement in the residential room upstairs. By sunrise, Silas Monroe's access was dead. His accounts were frozen, his routes were locked, and every captain who had once called him untouchable watched his name become evidence. Not rumor, evidence. Felix stood beside the terminal. He looked at Evan. He said, "Kid was right. The elevator never lied. A man did." Evan had been holding his rabbit the whole time. He looked at Felix. He said, "I know. You told me. Dawn came into the Black Crown Casino in the same way it always did. Through the windows on the east side of the building, where the early light hit the desert flat and turned everything the color of something about to begin." Trent Lawson was in the lobby. He was there because Roman had asked him to come. He had not been told why. He found out when Roman walked into the lobby with Mira and Evan beside him. And then he understood. Roman stood in the middle of the lobby where the previous night's exchange had taken place. He looked at Trent. He said, "Say what you said about the boy." Trent looked at the casino staff, standing in a loose arc around the space. He said, "I don't?" "Say it," Roman said, "so everyone hears what it sounds like." Trent looked at the floor. He said, very quietly, "I called him a liability, and I said he was strange." "And now?" Roman said. Trent looked at Evan. The boy was looking at him with the direct, uncalculating eyes of someone who has not yet learned to perform forgiveness. Trent said, "I was wrong. I'm sorry, Evan." Then Trent looked at Mira. "And I was wrong about you too." Mira did not smile. "Being desperate for childcare never made me unprofessional," she said. The lobby was quiet, not the suspended quiet of the previous night. The different quiet of a room that has just witnessed something it didn't expect. Roman turned to Evan. He crouched down until he was at eye level. He said, "A child saved my life last night because every grown man in this casino was too proud to listen. You were not strange. You were the only one listening." Evan said, "Felix told me to. He said machines don't lie." Roman said, "He was right about the machines and about you." He looked at Mira. She was watching her son, not Roman, her son. In the particular way a mother watches a child who has just been handed back to himself after a long time of having parts of him taken away. Roman stood. He said, "There is a floor in this building that has been empty for 4 years. I have been waiting to know what to put in it." Mira looked at him. "If you want to protect mothers like me," she said, "don't put our names on a charity plaque. Give us a place to leave our children safely while we work." She said it the way she said everything that mattered. Plainly. Looking at him directly. Not a gesture, a system. Childcare at night. Emergency legal support. A rest space for overnight shifts. Job training for mothers who want to move up. Not because we are grateful for the opportunity, because it makes the building run better, and we deserve the infrastructure. Roman looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell me what it needs," she told him. The floor was redesigned over 6 weeks. It opened on a Tuesday morning with no ceremony, no ribbon, no photographer. Mira had asked for that. She had also asked to be involved in the operations, not as a figurehead. She became the night shift services director, not as a favor. As the person who had written the policy everyone else should have written years ago. As the person who made decisions about how it ran, because she was the person who had spent 3 years understanding what the building's night shift workers actually needed. Roman had agreed. He had agreed to most of what she asked. He had learned, over those 6 weeks, that agreeing was not the same as losing ground. It was what happened when you started listening to someone, before the situation became a crisis. Black Crown Haven opened on the upper floor of the Black Crown Casino Hotel on a Tuesday morning that began like any other. Mira walked in first. Evan walked beside her. He was carrying a rolled drawing. He unrolled it and held it against the wall of the entrance. It was a picture of an elevator. The doors were open. Standing inside it were figures, a woman with dark hair, a man in a dark suit, several smaller figures, others, all of them standing in the car together, all of them facing out. The doors were open wide. Below the drawing, in pencil, in the imprecise but readable letters of a 6-year-old, still learning, going up. They mocked Evan Collins because he listened to elevators, wires, and warning lights. But in a city built on noise, the strange little boy was the only one quiet enough to hear a lie before it became a grave. If this story stayed with you, please like it and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the people we dismiss are often the ones paying closest attention. Subscribe so you never miss another story like this one. And tell us in the comments, which moment moved you most? The boy who pressed the button, the mother who believed him when no one else would, or the casino boss who finally learned to listen? We would love to know.